Well, what a delight to have with us today one of the gentlemen that writes for Human Events. And of course, if you are a subscriber or you on the website, you'll see David Harsanyi's articles. In fact, his latest one is out, pretty interesting. You may want to check it out. Guess what? In 2006, Obama explained exactly why debt matters, and he writes about that. He's also the author of a book called Obama's Four Horsemen. The disasters unleashed by Obama's re-election, and we want to talk to him about that book today. There's a copy there on the screen, and let me encourage you to check it out at Barnes & Noble and online at Amazon. David, nice to have you with us. How you doing, my friend?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Boy, your book is fascinating, to say the least, and I think here we are only a couple of weeks into this second term, and we're kind of still trying to catch our breath. How did it happen, and where are we going? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm catching my breath, but you know, it's the plan. I think Obama likes to really throw a lot of things at Republicans and a lot of things at Americans, a lot of populist talk and some policy occasionally. And I think, as I write in my book, we're all going to end up paying a pretty steep price for that in the future.
Well, on somewhat of a side note, do you think that he personally is this smart, or is he representing a group of people who have a socialistic agenda that we just can't live with?
Well, I actually think he's pretty smart. I don't know if he's as politically savvy as people think, because he does make a lot of mistakes, but they don't seem to hurt him. So I think, just generally speaking, though, he's not a dumb man, clearly. And the socialistic agenda is just, he came at the right time in history, and now, you know, those policies that those populist policies that he talks about, the American people seem to like them, or at least over 50% of the American people seem to like them, and they're working for him. And he's put the Republicans in a bad spot. And frankly, Republicans are pretty weak. They don't have very good leadership or charismatic leaders to counter those arguments, and that's why we're left in what is sort of a corroded democracy in a way.
All right, you have named the Four Horsemen as dependency, debt, surrender, and death. Boy, I don't like the last one.
Well, it always ends that way, unfortunately, for everyone.
Yeah.
That's inevitable.
Do you think he is in somewhat of a high throttle mode the first 2 years of his second term, facing the 14 election? I mean, if he's going to do damage, it's now pedal to the metal these next 2 years?
He might want to, but it's going to be difficult. I think, frankly, I think most of the big agenda items, especially Obamacare, wouldn't have been possible now, and certainly even in the second part of his first term. Now, if Democrats win back the House in 2014, I think that then you're looking at something that's really going to be remarkable in a very terrible way. And obviously, they're the Supreme Court justices. If God forbid one passes away, or if they retire, you're going to have one more judge, and that's going to essentially open it up for him to do nearly anything he wants, because the Supreme Court hasn't been much help at all. As it is, one more liberal judge, it won't be at all.
We've been watching the House fight the dependency issue, at least a little bit. I am somewhat disappointed, and leadership isn't pushing back harder, but they are pushing back a little bit, and now it looks like in the Budget Committee they may come up with a budget that does not include Obamacare. What does that mean?
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't mean much. I mean, Ryan's budget eliminates Obamacare, but what the chances of that passing through the Senate, or the chances of that actually being signed by the president, is nil. So it doesn't matter. But I think the Ryan budget does forward many interesting ideas, and I think the Republicans have relied on platitudes. And platitudes I agree with, about cutting government and so forth, and more liberty. But I think that they need to have reform ideas that they can champion. And I think that you know, block granting Medicaid, you know, having a private option in Medicare, these things, I'm not saying they're all very popular right now, but it gives Republicans ideas that they can take to the American people and say, here's what we want to do, and argue for them, and try to convince people that they're right, at least.
Your second horseman, debt. This president has just unleashed debt on this country at a rate that we just cannot even begin to comprehend. Is this any way salvageable?
No, not really. I mean, I think that we will have a debt bomb go off in some way. I don't exactly know what it'll look like. I mean, we always talk about $16 trillion in debt, but really the debt, and if you start thinking about the unfunded liabilities, is more like 50 trillion or whatever the number is. It's a huge number. Once interest rates start going up, servicing that debt is going to take a huge part of our budget. So it's crazy to think that it's going to get any better. In fact, the president, I think yesterday, said that he didn't think debt was a problem at all. Mm-hmm. He said it was sustainable for the next 10 years. So, and then when you factor in what's going on in Washington right now and the ideological divide, there's just no way that there are going to be any genuine reforms when it comes to entitlements, the thing that really drives debt. So I don't see how anyone could think that we're going to solve that problem until it becomes so big that we have to make real cuts. And think about the sequester. I mean, people treated it like a national trauma, and it wasn't even really a cut. What's going to happen when you really have to cut things that people depend on? Unfortunately, you've expanded dependency at the same time, so those two things will not mix well in the future. So has debt been kind of the main piece in his arsenal to bring about dependency? No, I think to him debt is irrelevant, really. I think that he has programs in mind and he wants to do certain things. He wants to pass these social engineering projects and he wants to hand out goodies to people to win elections. And because he thinks that that's the way, the economy can grow and things are fairer and all the stuff he says. And I think dependency is something that he's focused on because he believes it's a more moral country if we're more dependent. I think the opposite. I think dependency strips you of your initiative and self-worth, but he thinks the opposite. The debt is sort of a side effect, or not side effect, but sort of a residual thing that adds up, and he thinks it's irrelevant. But at some point, someone, our kids, my grandkids, someone is going to have to pay a very heavy price for that kind of policy making. And let me just say this: it's not as if Republicans, when they were running things,
right,
were great. So it's not just Obama, but he's the guy who sort of embraced all these things that I think are destructive and perpetuated them.
Why can't we handle some kind of a cut? I mean, the sequester was just, that was overblown. We got through the fiscal cliff. We got some kind of song and dance going on with budgeting right now. The raising of the debt ceiling. I mean, the whole thing has just been a great big joke, and you kind of wonder why doesn't this administration or the Democrats understand you cannot spend more than you're taking in? Why can't they understand the simplicity of that? Well, listen, I think there's some debt is not the end of the world, frankly, in the sense that if you have long-term projects for infrastructure and things that you really need, in some sense, you want people who are going to use it in the future to also pay for it. So I understand that part of it. But they've taken it to a place that's, or sometimes, and let me just go back, sometimes you have emergencies like a war and you need to have some debt. The problem is that they've sort of embraced it now. They're almost pro-debt. They're almost pro-deficit in a way. They think that if you're not spending on government, even, in fact, when revenues are lower, they argue to spend even more because they think that that's what drives the economy. So I think they understand it, but I think that they think they can fix it when the economy gets better or when they start taxing rich people. And I guess those are the two choices. So even though taxing the rich brings in such a small amount of revenue that it can never help us solve that problem. The only way we can solve this problem is to reform entitlements and pray that the economy booms, because then revenue will go up. Well, he's been enjoying some interesting days on Wall Street. I mean, the stock market's bumping around, but we know that's a house of cards. Well, I'm happy when the stock market does well. It's good for many Americans with their pension funds and retirement funds and all those things. But we can't look at the stock market and say, hey, this is a reflective of what's going on deeper in the economy. We have stagnation for 4 years. That's the real economic situation. Well, very little job growth. All right, so we got a president that's pro-dependency of everybody on federal government, pro-debt. He's handling it like it's a candy bar. And what is our foreign policy this day? Do you have any idea what our foreign policy is? No, I don't. And that's what I write about. I think that our foreign policy has been to treat America as if we were equal to everyone else, to shy away from believing in exceptionalism. And I don't argue in a neoconservative way that we have to go, bomb someone, though
As you know, some people probably deserve it. But I argue that we have to stand for something. If we don't stand for anything and we don't care about what's best for us in the world, then we're going to be in trouble. And I think if you look to North Africa, we're going to have a lot of trouble there. We've allowed democracies to form that are now basically turning into Islamic states, because democracy is simply a reflection of the morality and the belief system of the people who vote. And the people who vote there, many of them, their belief system is antithetical to the things that we believe in, and that's bad news for us in the long term.
Can we afford to turn our back on Israel like he's doing it?
We can afford it, but in the long run, I think it's bad news. This is a nation that shares many of our values, and that's important, especially in a region like that. Mm-hmm. It's also a country that is sometimes our lone ally in the world, or used to be before Obama became president. So we shouldn't do it for moral reasons, because they're the good guys, but also for legitimate, real, tangible foreign policy reasons. We shouldn't do it because Iran's going to have a nuclear weapon, and there will be a war in the Middle East because Israel cannot allow that to happen. It's a red line, as they say, and there's just no way around that I can see.
And your last one, death. I mean, I've never seen a president so pro-death. I mean, his battle against the pro-life community and people of faith has just been unbelievable, and yet he turns around and calls himself a Christian. I mean, it just doesn't add up. But we're seeing this agenda being shoved down our throat. Where is this going, David?
I don't know. It's a nihilistic worldview, in my opinion, that treats life this way. And I'm coming to you from a secular point of view here, in the sense that I'm just saying there's a rational argument for life. There's a scientific argument for life, and that's all been stripped away in a very cynical way, mm-hmm. and where we now use abortion as some kind of political hammer, in the sense that we say, if you're not on our side, if you're not pro-choice, and incidentally pro-choice in every direction, in the sense that late-term abortion, he's for it. He's never been against any sort of abortion. Then you hate women. Then you're warring against women. And then you make it a right that's even more important than the First Amendment. And you want and then you demand that other people pay for your right to do something that they find immoral. And even if I didn't find it immoral, I wouldn't want to pay for it. So I shouldn't have to pay for other people's abortion. And there are demographic reasons why this is bad for us, but also I think that the pro-life movement's made a lot of headway in very strong arguments, and now I feel like that's going to turn back in a bad direction.
Well, you have nailed it. The Four Horsemen: dependency, debt, surrender, and death. It's called the Obama's Four Horsemen: the disaster unleashed by Obama's re-election. David Harsanyi there. You can check it out. It's on the screen. And check it out at Barnes & Noble or online at Amazon.com. And, of course, be sure to be a subscriber to Human Events. You're going to see David's writings in there in his latest one. I'm out of time now, but I do want to get back to you on that last article you wrote. But let's stay in touch, because I really appreciate and the value of your contribution to the arguments out there. Thank you, David.
I appreciate that very much. Thanks for having me.
All right.